These old buildings do not belong to us only, that they have belonged to our forefathers, and they will belong to our descendants unless we play them false. They are not in any sense our property to do with as we like. We are only trustees for those that come after us. William Norris.
Hello, fellow history buffs. Thanks for coming along as we explore some of the various historic resources to be found throughout the city of Bonita Springs. This particular stop along our guided virtual tour is the McSwain House, located at 27451 Old 41 Road. Under local ordinance, it's designated as historic by the city of Bonita Springs. This house is named for the McSwain family, pioneers who settled in 1901 to the village of Survey, now officially the city of Bonita Springs. Joseph and wife Elizabeth McSwain had 8 children, 4 sons, Milton, known as Mitt, Clifford, Ansel, and Cullen, known as Cully, as well as 4 daughters, including Buella and Inez. The oldest daughter, Mary Lula, married pioneer J.W. Lyles in 1905. Then, 10 years later in 1915, the McSwain family built this house after their former home was swept away in a flood. And despite the fact that the most common mode of transportation at that time was by water, they chose this home site some distance away from the Imperial River on the dirt road called Heitman Avenue, later to become part of the Tamiami Trail. It would be 2 years later before this section of road between Naples and Fort Myers was even considered passable by car. Many years later, in the 1970s, the home was purchased by Hudon and Alice Humphreys. They had 2 children, Robert and Diane. Hudon was a respected pharmacist, and Alice was recognized as a renowned doll maker, artist, and collector. In fact, several of her pieces were sold at Christie's Fine Art Auction in New York City for a considerable amount of money. Very impressive indeed. In 2011, the Humphreys estate gifted the home to the Bonita Springs Historical Society to be preserved for its intrinsic historic value. Built in 1915, it is one of the city's oldest examples of the wood frame vernacular construction and gable-styled roof common to that era. Beneath the contemporary vinyl siding, the exterior walls of the home are slip-lapped Florida pine boards. It's the strength and durability of this dense pine lumber that has allowed this simple structure to survive several hurricanes, even without the strapping now required in home construction. Even inside the roughly 1,400 square foot home, much of the original beadboard paneled walls and yellow pine flooring still remain intact. Currently, in 2012, it's being restored, and once completed, the home will be open to the public once again.
A house comes with responsibilities, and a historic house comes with more responsibilities. Jane Powell.
I'm so glad that you came along with us on this leg of our virtual tour of historic resources, but there's still so many more resources to explore. So come on and join us. We'll see you at the next historical site along the way.
A country without a past has the emptiness of a barren continent. A city without old buildings is like a man without a memory. Graham Shanklin.
Hello, fellow history buffs. Thanks for coming along as we explore some of the various historic resources to be found throughout the city of Bonita Springs. This particular stop along our guided virtual tour is known historically as the Heitman Hotel, and in more recent years, it's been better known as the Shangri-La. This magnificent structure was built on an 8-acre parcel of land alongside Heitman Avenue, later known as the Tamiami Trail, and now the official address here is 27750 Old 41 Road. From the tropical grounds of this hotel, a mineral spring once bubbled freely, flowing directly into the waters of Oak Creek. It's this very spring for which our city was ultimately named during the early years of marketing and development. The architectural style of the primary structure showcases a mission-style parapet topped with finials, 1/1 double-hung wood sash windows, and 5 graceful arches are prominently featured inside the entrance hall. And although the original building wasn't completed until 1921, it's interesting to note how and why it came to be in the first place. It all began with a man by the name of Harvey Earnhardt Heitman, who was an energetic developer of Fort Myers, a brilliant businessman, an influential politician, and a grand visionary for the future of Bonita Springs. As early as 1905, the news press published an article regarding the establishment of the Bonita Land Company, a group of developers who took title to 4,000 acres in what was known at the time as the Village of Survey. Harvey Heitman was listed as president. Also in 1905, Harvey and wife Florida Abby Schultz Heitman purchased what would become Heitman Groves, consisting of numerous orange, tangerine, and grapefruit trees all around the area of what would later come to be known as Pennsylvania Avenue. Then, in 1913, for the sake of recreation, Heitman built a fish camp cottage along the Imperial River, yet he still preferred to summer with friends in Statesville, North Carolina. It was there in Statesville that he and his associates came up with the idea to build and assign the names for the roads in their parcel survey after the states for which they're still named today, like Pennsylvania Avenue, Kentucky Street, Tennessee Street, and so on. As a note of interest, the plat for Heitman's subdivision was filed in 1925 by J.H. Ragsdale. It extended west from Old 41 Road, then known as Heitman Avenue, to Michigan Street, north to the Imperial River, and south to Bonita Beach Road, so named even in 1925. Also of interest, Pennsylvania Avenue was originally called Ohio Street. Heitman and his group of visionaries pictured a beautiful and affluent city with lovely parks, sidewalks, and perhaps even a college. But what was needed first was a hotel to house the prospective buyers of the many home sites located in the 42-block parcel of land west of Heitman Avenue. To meet this demand, the Heitman Hotel was built and completed by Harvey's brother Gilmer Heitman in 1921. Sadly, in 1922, Harvey died from cancer, leaving his massive wealth and properties to his widow and to his brother Gilmer. More than a decade later, in 1935, Gilmer sold the Heitman Hotel and grounds to Sarasota couple Robert and Bess DeFore for $6,000. But the Depression certainly brought hard times, and the property was quickly sold to the Haverfields, who changed the name to Bonita Springs Hotel. They made improvements to the property and doubled the number of hotel rooms from 25 to 50. The next owner was Walter Mack, an heir of Cadillac Auto, whose financial means afforded extensive upgrades to the property. He renamed the hotel Villa Bonita and added access to a beachfront cabana club on Hickory Island. Built on a section of what is currently known as Barefoot Beach, the elegant restaurant and lounge had docks on the bayside for patrons who chose to arrive by boat. Unfortunately, after only a brief ownership, Mack died and the hotel was sold to Dr. Charles Naw. Naw, an osteopath, believed in the healing powers of the springs, and it was he who was responsible for the installation of a pool with a statue named the Indian Maid of the Springs. Throughout the years, the humble statue has endured the test of time, but the extravagant cabana club did not. In September of 1960, it was heavily damaged by Hurricane Donna and was eventually demolished. Next, in 1963, the property was sold to another doctor, this time a neuropath, Dr. R.J. Cheatham. It was Cheatham who changed the name of the hotel to Shangri-La, invoking the image of the pathway to paradise as described in the popular novel Lost Horizons. Under Cheatham's direction, the hotel became an institute devoted to the practices of natural hygiene, and is rumored to have been visited by many big-name guests and movie stars throughout the years. Then, in 1998, after a brief ownership by Leo Dahlman, the hotel and grounds were sold to La Mahana Trust, headed by Naples residents Heather Birch and Addison Fisher. The property and its facilities are once again dedicated towards the promotion of healthy lifestyles through diets rich in organic foods. Reservations and use of the property are currently available for weddings, meetings, and events. And of course, there are big plans in the making for the future of the Shangri-La.
They contain the wood from the old growth forest. They are monuments to the skill of those who labored to build them. Jane Powell.
I'm so glad that you came along with us on this leg of our virtual tour of historic resources, but there's still so many more resources to explore. So come on and join us. We'll see you at the next historical site along the way.
In whatever manner our young architects may one day solve the question of their art, let us, while waiting for new moments, preserve the ancient monuments. Let us inspire the nation with a love for national architecture. Victor Hugo.
Hello, fellow history buffs. Thanks for coming along as we explore some of the various historic resources to be found throughout the city of Bonita Springs. This particular stop along our guided virtual tour is the building known historically as the Williams-Packard House, located at 27324 Tennessee Street. Under local ordinance, it's designated as historic by the city of Bonita Springs. The Williams-Packard House was built in 1914 for the Clements family. It was originally located off of Dean Street, across from the elementary school, nestled amongst a large wooded parcel of land along Oak Creek. For the sake of preservation, the home was moved out of harm's way. Thankfully so, because the original interior woodwork is exquisite and was actually crafted by an artisan who built cabinets for the White House. The exterior features of the two-story home are the gabled roof, deep eaves with exposed rafters, a large covered front porch, and double-hung windows throughout. The home is an excellent example of bungalow-style architecture. The second owner of the home was Isaiah Williams, known around town as Three Barrel Williams, because of an unusual gun he owned. Isaiah, his wife, and 11 children moved to Survey from Arcadia after the Big Freeze of 1894 and 95. It's unclear exactly when and how many years this large and colorful family lived in the home. From 1940 to 1980, the house was owned by the Packard family. It was a site of many parties where guests enjoyed the warm tones of the Florida pine wood interior, complemented by the beautifully wooded land outside. But I guess you can't stop progress. So in 2001, in order to clear the land for a new housing development, the house was moved to this site on Pennsylvania Avenue. It's been beautifully restored by Christian Busk, and ironically, the house is still located along the banks of Oak Creek.
They represent our cultural heritage. To destroy them or to allow them to be destroyed by neglect is profoundly disrespectful, both to the trees that gave their lives and to the labor and skill of those who built the houses, with hand tools, I might add. Jane Powell.
I'm so glad that you came along with us on this leg of our virtual tour of historic resources, but there's still so many more resources to explore. So come on and join us. We'll see you at the next historical site along the way.
Make falling arts your care, and the old repair. Alexander Pope.
Hello, fellow history buffs. Thanks for coming along as we explore some of the various historic resources to be found throughout the city of Bonita Springs. This particular stop along our guided virtual tour is the site known historically as the Bonita Springs Elementary School, located at 10701 Dean Street. It is the only property in Bonita Springs currently listed on the National Registry of Historic Places, and a state historic marker is proudly displayed in front of the building. Built at the site of a previous wooden structure used for education, the one-story portion of this brick school was built in 1921 as a 3-room schoolhouse. The first principal was Alma McDonald. The school originally, but very briefly, accommodated all 12 grades, with only 2 students to graduate from all 12, Mary Laura Galloway Lyles and Clara Barnes, the class of 1933. Shortly thereafter, high school-age students were bused to Fort Myers High School. Life at the young school was quaint and fairly rural. Fencing was placed around the premises to keep out the free-ranging cattle that roamed the area. Initially, the school had no electricity, but to the delight of the students, it did have indoor plumbing. Mothers prepared soup and other single-dish lunches, and the local dairy operated by the McCormick family furnished the school children with fresh milk. Families from around the area could set their daily schedule to the ringing of the school bell, which hung outside the main entrance. In 1927, the school expanded with the addition of a 2-story building and auditorium. The separate structures were united in the early 1940s, and as early as 1948, the school had a lunchroom with a kitchen. The original brick structure is the only historic example of the Mediterranean Revival architectural style in Bonita Springs. Early Mediterranean Revival buildings were built throughout Florida between 1915 and around 1930. The style referenced the history and romance of Florida's Spanish heritage, and at the same time could be modified to suit Florida's hot and humid climate. Another reason for its popularity was that it could be stylized to suit the picturesque resort image that the state was promoting to its winter visitors. The popularity of the ornate style gradually decreased, however, with the coming of the Great Depression in the 1930s. Still serving as a public elementary school, it is a rare example of a historic school continuing to be used for its original function. An important part of our community for almost a century, we are proud that the Bonita Springs Elementary School is listed on the National Registry of Historic Places and has a state historic marker to honor it.
We are only the caretakers of these houses, which were here before we owned them and will be here after we're gone. Jane Powell.
We're so glad that you came along with us on this leg of our virtual tour of historic resources, but there's still many more to explore. So come on and join us. We'll see you at the next historic site along the way.
The strength of a nation is derived from the integrity of its homes. Confucius.
Hello, fellow history buffs. Thanks for coming along as we explore some of the various historic resources to be found throughout the city of Bonita Springs. This particular stop along our guided virtual tour is the building known historically as the Haldeman House, located at 10010 Pennsylvania Avenue. Built in 1886, this home is now the oldest remaining home in Bonita Springs, but it's also relatively new to our city. You might ask yourself, how could that be? Very simply, this house was the very first home built in Naples, Florida. But well over a century later, in 2005, it was rescued from near certain demolition by local preservationist Christian Busk, who had the house moved some 15 miles to the north and situated upon its current site. The home was originally built on a 5.5-acre strand of pristine beach by retired Confederate Army Colonel and Kentucky State Senator John Stuart Williams. Williams had been lured to the area by the press, which promoted it as surpassing the bay in Naples, Italy. He was accompanied on his journey to the remote oasis by a few Kentucky gentlemen, including friend and business associate Walter Newman Haldeman, owner and publisher of the daily Louisville Courier-Journal. At that time, the coastline was almost entirely uninhabited, save for early settlers who first arrived in the 1860s, Roger Gordon and Joe Wiggins, both commemorated with the naming of Gordon's Pass and Wiggins Pass. The other inhabitants were Madison Weeks and his family, who camped in a palmetto hut along the shore of Gordon's Pass. Apparently disillusioned by the intrusion of the Kentucky gentleman, Weeks is said to have moved his family just a few miles south, where he lived until his death. Contrary to the seclusion that Weeks apparently preferred, the Kentuckians envisioned the development of the Naples area as a seasonal resort town, both for the enjoyment of themselves and their guests, as well as the hope for financial gain. But by 1890, the enthusiasm of the small group had waned, and most of the shareholders decided to sell out. Despite the stock auction having been well advertised, Haldeman had the good fortune to be the only person to show up for the bidding. So for just the amount of money owed to him, Haldeman became the sole shareholder of the Naples Company, formerly known as the Naples Town Improvement Company, and received ownership of around 10,000 acres of land, as well as a mighty steamboat which was named Fearless. Haldeman is credited as the founder of Naples, and over the years his vision for Naples has largely come to fruition. Ironically, though, it was another boom of development, the real estate boom of the early 2000s, that threatened to be the demise of the cherished family home. By 1889, Haldeman had purchased the home from his friend Colonel Williams, and it had remained in the family ever since, right up until developers bought the property for Prospect in 2005. The Gulf front location of the home beside the Naples Pier was deemed too valuable for the single-family residents to remain on site. Today, this pure, low Victoria board and batten house rests safely along the banks of Oak Creek. With all original floors, doors, and windows, restructuring is at a minimal. Several additions have been made to the structure over the years, but all were in keeping with the original plan, and only limited gingerbread accents have been added. Rather uniquely, it has triangular cross sections instead of vertical planks on the exterior. Also unusual for homes built before 1927, this historic residence was constructed using local Florida cypress wood for the frame, siding, and milled trim work. Notice the extraordinary detail of the trim work in every room. Additional architectural features such as the bay window in the formal dining room, the fireplace in the enormous living room, and the numerous outside venues will allow future residents to become enchanted by the former oldest home in Naples, now the oldest in Bonita Springs.
People are becoming more and more conscious of the unity of human values and regard ancient monuments as common heritage. It is our duty to hand them on in the full richness of their authenticity. Venice Charter, 1964.
We're so glad that you came along with us on this leg of our virtual tour of historic resources, but there are still many more to explore. So come on and join us. We'll see you at the next historical site along the way.
The strength of a nation is derived from the integrity of its homes. Confucius.
Hello, fellow history buffs. Thanks for coming along as we explore some of the various historic resources to be found throughout the city of Bonita Springs. This particular stop along our guided virtual tour is the building known historically as Good Bread Grocery, located at 27755 Old 41 Road. Under local ordinance, it's designated as historic by the city of Bonita Springs. Having traveled in the same social circles as ambitious founding real estate developers Harvey Earnhardt Heitman and John Henry Ragsdale of Fort Myers, the wealthy Goodbread family built their grocery store in 1920 to anchor the development of early Bonita Springs. The Goodbread family lived behind the store in a stately home with bountiful mango and citrus trees on the grounds. Across Heitman Avenue, later part of the Tamiami Trail and now Old 41 Road, the family also built an ice house on the bank of Oak Creek. Being the major tributary of the Imperial River, Oak Creek also provided a mooring spot for the Goodbread's luxurious yacht, as well as providing shipping boats access to the citrus groves off to the west. Like Harvey Heitman, the Goodbreads were horse enthusiasts, although they owned Tennessee Walkers rather than thoroughbreds. And due to their passion for riding, the family organized and instituted an annual fox hunt on horseback. The hunt began a mile or so from the beach and headed east from there. Afterward, to culminate the end of the hunt, a festive barn dance was held that welcomed all of the townsfolk. The Goodbread Grocery Building is a humble remnant of what was prominently known as Goodbread Corner. Originally, the store had a filling station and a patio atop where travelers of the Tamiami Trail could relax or enjoy a meal. Since the Goodbread family, the building has had a variety of owners and has housed a variety of businesses, but has been used most predominantly as a restaurant. The architecture of the structure is Spanish-inspired mission style, which is rooted in the features that are characterized in California mission churches. In the 1890s, buildings of this style grew in popularity in western United States, but Florida also embraced its own rich Spanish heritage. Mission features include very simple parapets with a curvilinear design, emphasis of texture and substance over extraneous detail, and the absence of ornamentation.
It has been said that, at its best, preservation engages the past in conversation with the present over a mutual concern for the future. William J. Murtagh.
I'm so glad that you came along with us on this leg of our virtual tour of historic resources, but there's still so many more resources to explore. So come on and join us. We'll see you at the next historical site along the way.
We shape our buildings, thereafter our buildings shape us. Winston Churchill.
Hello, fellow history buffs. Thanks for coming along as we explore some of the various historic resources to be found throughout the city of Bonita Springs. This particular stop along our guided virtual tour is the building known historically as the Nutting House, located at 9950 Pennsylvania Avenue. Under local ordinance, it's designated as historic by the city of Bonita Springs. The Nutting House was built in 1913 by Harvey Heitman after he bought much of the Comer parcel in 1907. Newly planted citrus groves were located in a portion of this parcel due to the climate and quality of the soil along the southern banks of the Imperial River. The house was built as a place for his grove overseer to live and was originally located on the riverfront on River Avenue. The house, along with 40 acres, was purchased by E.P. Nutting in 1942. Although he originally knew little of growing citrus, he soon developed a thriving business, shipping baskets of fruit to his home area of Moline, Illinois. Nutting spent his retirement here growing fruit and researching the area's history for his book, The Beginnings of Bonita Springs, Florida. In later years, he developed a residential subdivision from his citrus grove lands called Nutting-like-it Grove. The architectural features of the house are typical to the Florida cracker style, including the lean-to front porch. Constructed from old Florida slash pine, much of the exterior wall and roof framing are original, as is the pine flooring inside. The living room showcases a beautiful all-brick fireplace, which offers a warm and cozy ambiance. In 2003, the house was salvaged and moved to its current location on Pennsylvania Avenue by local preservationist Christian Busk. After the move, the square footage was increased dramatically from around 900 to 1,800, transforming the modest 4-room bungalow into an adorable 8-room cottage.
Historic buildings are a proud and significant part of our and every nation's heritage. They are an irreplaceable element and collective memory of local communities. They contribute both to our sense of identity and to that regional distinctiveness, which is so valuable and so vulnerable. Sir J. Stevens.
I'm so glad that you came along with us on this leg of our virtual tour of historic resources, but there's still so many more resources to explore. So come on and join us. We'll see you at the next historical site along the way.
In the end, the character of a civilization is encased in its structures. Frank Gehry.
Hello, fellow history buffs. Thanks for coming along as we explore some of the various historic resources to be found throughout the city of Bonita Springs. This particular stop along our guided virtual tour is the Lyles Hotel and Imperial River Cottages located at 27300 Old 41 Road. Under local ordinance, they're designated as historic by the city of Bonita Springs. Known for most of its existence as Imperial River Court, the 2-story building was built by pioneer James Wallace Lyles. Originally from Alabama, J.W., as he was more commonly known, and his brother Marvin were enticed to Florida by a newspaper ad calling for citrus grove workers. As a result, The two brothers migrated by train as far south as Punta Gorda, where the train line ended. From there, they took a boat to Fort Myers, where they briefly stayed and worked in the citrus groves for a year or so. But the harsh freezes in the 1890s rearranged the geography of the Florida citrus industry. So in 1897, J.W. and his brother Marvin moved further south to work as grove managers in the newly planted citrus groves of the small community known as Survey, modern-day Bonita Springs. It was these tropical fruit groves along the Imperial River and its tributaries that helped to further spur the development of Survey, so called for the encampment of the Army Corps of Engineers who surveyed the area. After his marriage to Mary Lula McSwain in 1905, J.W. left the grove work and developed a trucking business. Later, his skill and love of horses served him well at the cattle ranch he owned. Then, in 1927, he opened this hotel, which was actually more of a boarding house than a hotel. The peaceful river setting of the property and its location along the newly opened Tamiami Trail made it a popular stop for seasonal travelers and winter visitors. On the grounds of the hotel, campsites accommodated the tin can tourists, so called because the campers primarily ate canned food that they brought with them from the north. Years later, in 1945, numerous wood frame cottages were added to the property. With most set just feet from the Imperial River, renters could literally fish within a dozen steps of their cabin's door. Common to the era, the bungalows had tin-gabled roofs and walls that were constructed using board and batten siding. The cottages that remain have been relocated away from the riverfront and now serve as artist cottages frequently visited by the public. Over the years, the two-story building has had at least two dramatic makeovers. In the early 1990s, the exterior was boldly painted with a tropical motif to serve as a setting in the movie Just Cause, starring Sean Connery. Later, in 2003, the 3-acre parcel was purchased by the city of Bonita Springs and the building was converted to office space. Currently, it serves as the headquarters for Bonita Springs Code Enforcement and does double duty as a venue for various exhibits displayed by the Bonita Springs Historical Society. The Society has decorated a first-floor room as a period bedroom, representative of the 1930s. Upstairs, the Society has created a historic research center to help further the understanding of local heritage. The historic grounds once again teem with people during various public events.
One looks at his bit of land, his home, and wonders what the future will bring. Will the next influx of investors be prospectors who toss the land for gain, or will they see its future as a home to develop with love and concern for his fellow man and future generations? If so, then we can preserve the goodness of life so treasured by the pioneers. Mildred Briggs.
I'm so glad that you came along with us on this leg of our virtual tour of historic resources, but there's still so many more resources to explore. So come on and join us. We'll see you at the next historical site along the way.